Today, we're going to do the Canvas to Business Model Innovation, a digital perspective. In this episode, we're going to explore our digital canvas and to understand and visualize our model and building blocks for our online businesses. And we're also going to talk about our new shared language so we can kind of talk about and collaborate on some new ideas and all about the digital universe. My name's Andrew.
And I'm Cara, and let's kick off this podcast.
So today we're talking about the business canvas here. So, what is the business canvas? What is this whole thing? And we'll talk a little bit more about this. But the first kind of thing is introducing what this is. And the first episode of our podcast, we talked about all of the different areas of focus. From kind of the customer journey, and we kind of dove into that a little bit. But one thing we do anytime we do anything, we like to talk about what are the aspects of the business vision and the business model of that as well, right? And is what all the work that we're doing actually gonna provide fruits of our labor to give us value for our time, as well as we provide value to others, and is it makes sense for what we're planning on doing. What do you think about that whole kind of business aspect of kind of the model there?
Yeah, so important, Andrew. Just a big thing that we do at Blue Ascension is really look at that the holistic part of digital marketing and all the pieces. And this canvas, I love that word canvas because I love to paint and doodle and stuff like that. And this really is like that starting place, and it's showing us the puzzle pieces of a good, successful digital business, whether it's fully online or it's a component of a business that has a digital arm to it. So it's looking at all the pieces and how they all fit together.
Yeah, and I like the word canvas as well, Cara. And I think the one thing that I really resonate to this and really kind of hits me is that we've done a lot of projects in the past, and sometimes if you don't even at a high level look at all the different areas first before you kind of start doing the work, you definitely might find some holes, or you're not focusing on the right aspects of a project. If you look at the map here or the canvas here, we're going to kind of just talk about each one of these, but they all fit together and they all are in relation to each other, and they all kind of work towards that ultimate goal of delivering that value to the customer. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And it's right in the middle of that value proposition there. And if you think about stickies on top of each one of these things in your own projects or your own business ventures, how do those stickies, what do they say for your company and your projects? And are you missing any things? And really, this is just a way for us to kind of look through the overview and make sure that we're thinking of all the different aspects of your digital business. And then we're going to focus on the digital side of this, right? Today, Cara?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And another way I like to think about this, Andrew, and you really touched on that, and it sparked something in me, is that looking at this is it to really simplify it, I mean, those terms all sound very complex and very heavy and like MBA kind of stuff. But in the end, for me, it's really about what's the thing, the value proposition is what's the thing, the product service that you're providing that is of value to your customer. And then all those are the ways that you get that value to your customer. And then in the end, you get paid for it if your business is a for-profit business. So to really simplify it, it's just getting the thing that you do that solves people's problems, getting it to them, and all the elements that are needed to get that out there. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to put it, and with that, like, let's start digging into it a little bit. Let's
Yeah,
start
let's
looking
do.
through the canvas.
Let's do.
And one last thing, kind of what to add on to what Kara said was like, you know, ultimately we are developing, looking at these, and we develop ways to share our vision and talk about our vision.
Mm-hmm.
And these are just we call it, it's called shared language, and so how we can dig into deeper concepts as well. And so the first step is what we're kind of focusing on today, and we'll see, what people like to talk about, or if we want to dig into each of these. But ultimately we want to learn about the canvas today, right? And learn about how
Exactly.
that all fits together. Then,
Mm-hmm.
one fun way is, once we learn that framework, is then how do we look at patterns of successful companies, and then we can map what they're doing, and then see some really nice patterns to mimic, or
Mm-hmm.
find unique ways how they're interacting with them, and maybe introduce some of those in your own. And then how do
Mm-hmm.
you then, if you're starting a new project or your business, how do you then design your own? How do you then design it for your company? And then maybe there's trigger words or other words to help you
Mm-hmm.
think about ideas and things to make sure you include. And then um, what's the strategy behind that? And then why is there, certain patterns for very successful companies?
Mm-hmm.
There's a strategy behind that, and
Right.
how they kind of connect and work together, and then kind of working through all that, and not bringing it all together. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely a
Yeah.
very fun concept. So where does it all start?
Yeah.
And Cara, we were both talking about your value, what you're delivering to, but the first where as you start is that we definitely need to um, think about where the customer's at, and who are we delivering to, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Um, we have right here, who are the people or groups of who benefit from the value that we're creating. That this is that whole avatar thing we talk about, right, Cara?
Uh-huh.
Um,
Right. Right.
what's your thought about thinking about your customer first before you
Yes.
start any of
Yeah.
this, what you're delivering and all that other stuff?
Yeah, it's crucial. It's really crucial. Like in content development, I always think about one person that that we're talking to. And with this, Andrew, I like to look at, like, are we talking to individual people? Are we talking to groups of people? And who's really going to benefit from what we're doing? Because if the customer isn't finding value in our value proposition, um, our business isn't going to succeed. So yeah, very
Yeah,
important.
and you hit it well, and that's the first kind of point here, is segments. And so
Hmm.
realistically, when we're looking at customers, we look at, are they groups of people, or are they, you can have them in different types of groups. We're working on a project where we actually have where we deliver online membership to individuals, but
Hmm.
we also
Hmm.
deliver and work with corporations. And so it might be the same base of products, maybe packaged in a little different value
Hmm.
proposition, but they're different segments, and all of the different aspects of the model might um, relate to that segment differently. So we talk about customer segments here, so that when we're talking about each of the different areas, they may relate to those
Hmm.
specific segments. So you may have different aspects to all the different parts of the model depending on what those segments are. So, like
Hmm.
our says, not we need to think about that first.
Yeah.
So, and then the segments here, and again, we're just talking overview today. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff to kind of digest and talk about. But segments, we have and so we talk about the types of segments. We have the mass market. We can have a niche market. We could have a segmented, diversified. Do we doing B2B? Are we doing a business to business? Are we doing business to consumer?
Right.
Multi-sided, where lots of different aspects of these different types of customers. So definitely, customer is a great starting point, I think, to this whole journey. Would you agree, Cara?
Yeah, I think it's crucial. I really do. Yeah.
All right. Well, and then so when we go from customers, you think about now, if you look at our map, we're going now to right across the channel there to the value proposition. So realistically, what are we going to now deliver to our what are we making or delivering? So what problems? Another way to think about it is, what are those problems we're hoping to solve for people, right? If we're having a physical product, and then
Right.
in our perspective, what's our digital product? What is that value we're going to be delivering?
Right. Right. And the value proposition, that's such a big word, and it's a really good word. And it's also, yeah, it's that how are we helping? The way I look at it really simply is, how are we helping our customer live a better life in whatever that may be? That sounds kind of big, but I think it boils down to that in a way. I really do.
Yeah, and it could be, enjoyment of life, and it could be
Mhm.
delivering learning or teachings. It could be delivering coaching. It could be delivering
Mhm.
bundles of information in a
Right.
organized way. So why do we buy books, or why do I buy books? To
Yeah.
learn things as well, right? So they're organized, and people have taken the time to find that value, deliver that value, and
Mhm.
package it. And that's that first one, is that packaging, that bundle there of it's not just one thing, and we'll talk a little bit about how we
Mhm.
build these together of our resources and activities. But realistically, what are we delivering, and who are we delivering it to?
Mhm.
Let's see here.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
A
so we
fun
talk about.
analogy I've heard,
Go ahead.
yeah, is that thing about a hole, like a hammer and a nail aren't to pound something in the wall. They're to hang a picture, to evoke emotion and spark a memory, that kind of thing. So the tool is not the problem. The problem, or the thing we're solving, is that emotional connection of hanging that picture. And I always like to think of that analogy this way.
Right, and then that's why it's value versus getting them a widget, right? Nothing.
Yes.
It's
Exactly.
what are we providing?
Yeah.
How are we making their lives easier, more enjoyable,
Right.
or
Right.
you
Easier.
other things down the
Yep.
road? Yeah, and so,
Yeah.
like I said, the bundle of those value proposition. Again, it's a big word, but we're just using it to be consistent. But um, and then we look at what are the elements of our value propositions. And we're not going to go into this too deep today, but we talk about newness, performance, customization.
Hmm.
One I always like the word getting it done, like just to do it for you, like get it
Hmm.
over with,
Yeah.
right?
Done for
Brand,
you.
right? Price,
Right.
low price things,
Hmm.
right? Risk reduction, accessible, convenience. So lots of
Hmm.
different ways those elements are then brought into those values. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where um, we're starting
Hmm.
here. And so the nice thing about this is, so we started with customer.
Hmm.
Now we're talking about what value we're going to provide here.
Hmm.
And so if you look between value and customer, you see that there's a channel. And so how are those two
Hmm.
connected? You want to talk a little bit about this?
Channels, yes, very important. It's the how do we communicate what we offer, and how do we deliver that to our customers? That's what a channel is all about.
Yeah, and we talked about on our first first podcast, a few weeks ago, talking about a lot of these are channels that we use on a daily basis. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But ultimately, this is a big focus in the digital world, is the channels, is like,
Huge.
where are we delivering these things to? So we talk about the first thing we talk about is the types of channels, and simply there's you know we can talk about channels we own and channels that we rent, and then we're going to go into the phases, and which really goes into the customer journey. This is we talk about this all the time, right? Audience, engagement, leads, and conversions, right? And then what's after, right? Delivery.
Right.
And
And
then we
delight.
want to talk about what's that?
And
And
delight.
delight. Yes. And what's after the sale, right? Well, what happens
Right.
after you make your initial sales?
Exactly.
And and this is so important, that your message, we talked about this many, many times, right? Of that the message is different throughout that customer journey, and that if you're talking to the audience for the
Right.
first time and they don't know you, they don't trust you, just like we're here, we're learning, and sharing our ideas and visions with you. But after that, then there might be specific ways that we can provide value, and then we lead you into the next stages of maybe things that we want to work together on, or projects, or things that you might be selling online. So
Right.
that is really that the phases there in the customer journey. Um,
Yeah.
and then we talked about the Trinity. You want to talk about the Trinity real quick and what that is to
Yeah,
us?
we'd love
Why
to.
we bring it
We
up?
love to. Love the Trinity. We call it the digital Trinity, and we consider that being email, like email newsletters, email marketing, your social channels, and your website. So all those come together in this beautiful planet of goodness, of digital goodness, that's going to help reach your customers, provide information, and help build trust with them.
Right. And each of those aspects, um, like social media, is maybe earlier on the journey of
Right.
finding
Right.
that audience in those niche neighborhoods or niche places within social media, and where do you find those pages and groups where people hang out and find what they're
Yeah.
looking for, and we find the customer with the value they're looking for, and then we help them provide and help and ideas of that. And then um, once we get to know them, they might give us their email address, and then we can then share those email channels, and then provide value. We can deliver things over email, right? And maybe
Right.
the value is that they want a newsletter once a month, or that provides them some type of information or entertainment, or lots of different things. And then where do we deliver our products and our additional deeper information? And that's our marketing focus websites, like Cara said.
Yeah,
The three,
exactly.
the three big
Exactly.
ones, right?
Yeah, huge, huge. And something to think about that I've noticed recently in a more deep way, I guess, is that the channels that our businesses need to be on needs to be where our customers are. And that sounds really simplistic and obvious, but oftentimes I see, well, like for example, Russell Brunson, the funnel master who really developed that whole system. He talked once about wanting to meet or wanting to share information about this new service on, I think it was on Instagram or something, about his, he was starting a new podcast, and he was sharing all this stuff about his new podcast on Instagram. And finally, nothing was happening, no traction. He finally realized that's because podcast people might not be on Instagram. They're on podcasts. So that has always stuck with me as a great explanation of just be where your customers are. And just because we're familiar or more comfortable with a certain channel, if our customers aren't there, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and I think the more we I guess there's 2 points to what you just said, Kara. I think one
Mhm.
thought is that the what we try to do is that we leverage those channels, and we may, if it is podcast, you might say, "Hey, I have a podcast," and you might put it on Instagram, and you might put it on Facebook.
Mhm.
So you're spreading some awareness throughout the different channels and maybe
Mm-hmm.
focusing on certain channels.
Right.
And then the second thing would be that, we're also learning the more we get into digital marketing in the world of, especially social media, that there truly are different groups and customer
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and people that we interact with all are on different platforms, right? And so we're really
Yes.
learning
So true.
what's a good
Mm-hmm.
platform for
Yeah.
medium form content, what's the form for different like media, like images and videos, right? Or long
Mm-hmm.
form videos,
Right.
maybe YouTube.
Right.
And then communities, communities can run on social media, but in social media groups, but it maybe is at the best place. So
Mm-hmm.
we're
Yeah.
finding out that, not always
Yeah.
is that the answer. So
Yeah. So true. Good point.
so
Yeah.
we talked about the customer segment, who we focusing on first. We talked about the value. We
Mm-hmm.
get the channels, and then we're going to go into that customer relationship here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is, what type of relationship does each of our customer segments expect us to establish and maintain with them? So that's an interesting concept of customers are expecting certain types of communication from us, and uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting perspective. And I thought that was a nice way to put it, Cara, when you wrote that up.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And
J-
maybe one way to look at this.
Andy,
Yeah.
this,
Go
what's
ahead.
your thought on customer relationships there?
Yeah. There. Excuse me. I like the idea of because our customers, even though it might not be spoken, they do have an expectation of what the relationship is going to be like with our business or their digital experience. So really meeting that and giving them what they need and what they want at certain spaces. And that also gets back, I think, Andrew, what do you think, to that customer journey? And perhaps they want and expect different things depending on the level of trust we've built with them and that kind of thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the way we communicate definitely 100% is there. And you're right. Once they become a customer, and they have bought from us,
Mhm.
I think that's when we enter into this channel. And like you said, I definitely think your value proposition ultimately provides the initial response to are they happy or not, right?
Mhm.
But this
Mhm.
one talks a little bit more deep into that, and that's why I like this one. But we were actually just talking about this recently, right, Cara? About um, let's say a winery, for example, and
Mhm.
um, you
Mhm.
know, you could have the best marketing on the beginning of that customer journey you were talking about, and you get people to
Right.
convince them to come try and come to your tasting room, right? And once you do that, ultimately the value proposition there is you come and try great wine and explore the tasting room and the
Mhm.
people
Right.
and all that. Once they get in there, it's the tasting room and the wine and everything together needs to do their job. Like you could,
Yes.
they're,
Right.
or they have great wine and they have a bad salesperson or a bad person there that's sharing their experience, and that can
Right.
turn, or
Mhm. Yeah.
you have the best beautiful tasting room in the world and the best people, and you know and they get in there and the wine doesn't taste very good, right? So
Right. Mhm.
it all needs to come together, but like you said, then what do we focus on? And that's kind of the first motivation there. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. But
Yeah, do.
um,
Do.
and the motivations there are really interesting because are we focused, and this goes to Kara's first point, is are we focusing on customer acquisition? Are we focusing on the audience, the engagement, or leading them to
Mhm.
your value proposition? Are we focusing on the next one would be customer retention? Once they become a customer, um,
Mhm.
do you want to keep them happy? That's even more important for repeat customers and also for
Right.
ongoing memberships and subscriptions that you got going. As well as the third one would be upsells and boosts. So once you have a group of people that are really enjoy your products and things that you're providing,
Mhm.
are you continuing to listen, hear what they're saying and then give them more of the products that they're looking for.
Right. Yeah. And those are all very different. Yeah.
I know recently I've been part of some really nice art communities, but digital art communities, and sometimes it's really hard to get in the first one. You're like, I'm not sure I want to do their course or do their things or their packs, and eventually you buy a course maybe that you saw was really interesting, and you're like, wow, this is exactly what I was looking for. They're great people. They have great follow-up, and then they sell some brushes, or they sell some I'm talking digital things, right? But some packages of things to help me with my process or things. And like, at a certain point, you're just like, just keep giving them, give me what I need. I'm going to keep buying it. And if they're good value for what they're providing and they're helping me, and I know the value and the trust that they built throughout that first part of that journey, right? Then I'll keep buying without asking, right? Because the value needs to come through, but that's a fun journey, right? And that's what
It is.
digital is all about.
Yeah, it is.
Anything about that, those three stages, or focusing on one or the other, or especially on different types of value? Do you focus on getting new customers? Do you focus on keeping people happy afterwards? I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it really depends on, excuse me, where that customer is, and also in some ways it's going to depend on where your business is in the evolution of its existence. So if you're a brand new business, you're definitely going to be looking at customer acquisition and bringing people in the first time. If you've been around for 10, 20 years, you're going to have new customers coming in ideally, and then keep building that customer base that you have and keeping them happy. So they all kind of intertwine for sure.
And a good flow between the two, right? Like, we work with a number of restaurants and stuff, and we see that as well. Like, as they're newer restaurants, you'll see that really you're focusing on sharing what do we have, what's your value, what's this. But ultimately, it's that balance. You start your email list, and you let your not favorites, but the people that love you already, keep them informed of what's going on, and you have this nice inflow and outflow of people, both throughout that. The balance of that too is just as important. And as you are around longer, you may focus a little bit more on customer retention, right? And as you're newer, you may focus more on customer acquisition or new customers. So definitely as a important part there. So we talked about the motivations there, and another thought that really the category is something we're digging into this already, but is really the categories of customer relation ideas and things like that. And I thought it was fascinating to me, hearing and going through this as assistance, personal assistance, right? And this is kind of a customer service point of view, right? A dedicated personal assistance, right? Self-service, FAQs, and how do you, when you deliver something, how do you provide people the tools so they can use it, and if they have any problems, that they know how to work through those issues, especially with tech, right? Like,
so important.
What's that?
So important with tech. Yes.
Yeah. We run an online membership as well, and we're always helping especially newer people learn how to use the membership, how to use the portals, and how to enjoy and use it, not necessarily the right or wrong way, but how to make them comfortable and enjoy the process so they can really enjoy the value. If they can't get into the portals and their passwords are not working, or they don't know how to move into the next stages of your membership. So the more we can help them relax and enjoy that, then they can really focus on what the true value of that membership is, right? For example.
So true. Yeah. So
So,
true.
and then online communities, right? And that's a big one, right? So, uh,
Hmm.
online communities is a huge uh, aspect of, especially digital nowadays, of helping people and providing that, I don't know, synergy of
Hmm.
happiness and other
Right.
people hearing about other people's happiness. It could be the other
Uh-huh.
way too. If you're not doing good, then you're um, could go in a downward spiral, and people are all learning how to
Right.
complain together or get upset together. But
Right.
that excitement of using your product, and maybe the last category of co-creation, and maybe your community starts. You bring your community into learn and enjoy to use your product and get excited, and it gets other
Hmm.
people in the communities excited. Or you can
Right.
also, use some of that in your cycle of
Uh-huh.
goodness in your model there.
Right. Good. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot to the customer there. Customer relations is originally, I just thought it was like keeping them happy, and a long time ago, keeping them happy and maybe pulling in reviews and all that stuff. But how do you
Hmm.
like you always say, like, you buy something and you never hear something again, but you buy something, especially online, you get
Right.
help on how to use it, and then you get a follow-up later on, maybe here's some additional value that might provide because you're on our email list. And then
Hmm. It's
um,
important.
here's our FAQs, or here's our self-services. Hey, do you want to join our community, right? Or let's say you're a
Mhm.
winery and you sell a
Right.
bottle of wine, or you sell an event or something like that, and then
Right.
you follow up and say, we have a community, we have a wine club, we have things like, come join people that are fans as well, and then you enjoy the product and aspect together. So
Yes. Uh-huh. All those things are so important. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think communities can be a big one. So
Hmm.
or sorry, customer relationships. So that's kind of the first grid there. So we talked about who's your customer, what value,
Hmm.
how are you delivering your product and communicating with your customers. Again, that's kind of like a channel or a bridge, and then the bridge is on
Hmm.
the other side, the customer relationships, and
Right.
keeping those together. And then ultimately, it all comes down to, especially online, is uh, you know our sales, and how are we doing this? You want to talk a little? Introduce this one.
You bet. Revenue streams. Yes. What, yes, what value that we're providing is the customer willing to pay for? So, assuming your business is a for-profit model, which a lot of us are, what are you providing that the customer sees enough value to pay you money for that, to use a non-elegant phrase? But there's so many different ways to generate revenue. And a little backstory about us: we created a beautiful, if I may say so, great flavors several years ago. It was showcasing the great flavors of the Central Coast. So that was adventures, activities, food, beverages, that kind of things. And we did these long form, beautiful in-depth articles and all this content. I mean, beautiful. It was beautiful content. But looking back, we didn't follow this canvas. We didn't know what our revenue stream was. We didn't have a business model for how to leverage all that beautiful content and relationships with people that we built into bringing in money. So it was a beautiful concept, but we were missing this little key point. So very important to think about this ahead of time.
Right, and why this is kind of the cornerstone and the key of that
Yeah.
corner. If you look at the model, it's right in the bottom corner. It touches
Hmm.
this whole right side of the
Anchors.
map.
Yeah. It
And
anchors everything.
realistically, not only what are you going to sell, which is the value proposition. I think kind of alludes to the beginning of what Kara was talking about. Is that
Hmm.
what are you going to sell, and now how, and then are people willing to pay for that? And then now we can talk about the types of those things and payments, and
Hmm.
especially as we're getting more into the digital world, and recently, like, there's lots of new models of this, and maybe not new, but they're becoming more and more um, used, and
Hmm.
worked online. So we
Right.
talk about the types here, and those could be recurring or a transactional one-time payment, like
Hmm.
a course or something you might buy one time, or you might buy access to a webinar, right?
Right.
But there could
One
be
time.
membership type models where it's more recurring. And so
Hmm.
then we talked about, and this was just also, just ways to think about those online sales Cara was talking about, and those the revenue streams is right. And streams could be that you might have multiple ways to pull money in
Hmm.
based
Ideally,
off your
yeah.
same value proposition.
Right.
And so they talk about, excuse me, asset sales, usage fees, subscription fees,
Hmm.
leasing things online,
Hmm.
licensing. Maybe you're an artist and you're licensing your work, and advertising. And kind of like we
Yes.
talked about earlier, is that if you're providing value of your influence, or you're providing interesting things for people, things to do in areas, or things that's, then that's where advertising might come in. So there's lots of different ways
Hmm.
to generate revenue.
Right.
And then the different types of revenues, like I said, might be recurring or one time, right?
Hmm. Right. And ideally, it's great to get both of those. I mean, you can use the same kind of content or the same thing, but parse it out differently. So, like you said, Andrew, it could be a course that's several components long. It could be an ebook. It could be a membership that shares that content over time as well.
Exactly. And the last thing is pricing, we talked about. And
Hmm.
in simplicity form, it could be a fixed price, or it could be dynamic. And there's lots of
Right.
different ways. But originally dynamics a little more, could be negotiated for bigger contracts, bigger projects.
Hmm.
The more complex or things, I think there's probably a little bit more negotiation in there, or about what to include and not to include. And also maybe things that might be related to the availability of it. Like we work with
Right.
lodging
Hmm.
and hotels, and that's a pretty typical one on very important weekends or busy weekends. The prices might go up a little bit based off of
Hmm.
what
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
so. All right. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
look at the right side of the map. We're doing good here. Again, we're not digging into this. We're really just introducing this. And so we talked about who is your customer, what
Hmm.
is the value, how are you meeting those channels and delivering and communicating those customer relationships, right? And then now we talked about those revenue streams and how you're both what you're selling is that value proposition, but then how are you pulling that in, and what kind of fees, and are you doing one time or reoccurring, and
Hmm.
definitely this is becoming exciting nowadays with digital. It's becoming very dynamic, and
Right.
lots of
Right.
interesting ways to think about this. So let's go into the next section, which would be our key resources. Uh, let's talk about this one here. Here we go. All right, you want to talk a little bit about this
Yeah. Hmm. Yes. So, in order to deliver the thing that we're providing that solves a problem for our customer, taking all those into account, what do we need to do that? So we might need physical assets, human, intellectual, or financial, and those are different components that we need to get that to our customer.
Yeah, and these are truly, I would say, to a certain degree, these are truly these are the in the vault. These are your really
Mhm.
special things that
Good point.
what makes you um, what makes you special, I would say.
Good point.
Um, this is the things that go into your value proposition. And again, it could be uh, proprietary processes, or recipes that or you have people that are very good at something. That's the human
Mhm.
aspect, and a lot of
Human.
times
Yes.
a lot of small companies very very our focus on the human aspect, and it's a very important piece. Cooks, and we're talking in the winemakers, and and definitely over years and years of learning things, you become very good and a specialist in certain things. So lots of these are in your vault, and lots of ways to think about these things. But there's nothing there. But when you're finding out what your value proposition is, it's good to think about, go back, okay, what do I need to make this happen? Or what do I need to develop? It could be there as well. So it might not be ready yet, right? You might need to create some recipes, or create your get training so you can do the things that you want to do, right? Or train people, staff, and people that so. And of course you have to have money to do some of that stuff too, right?
Exactly.
Not always, but sometimes. So the next part about that is right above that, right? The key activities. So Kara brought up the key resources you need, and then the activities are, what are the most important things your business must do to make the model work, right? So now you need to do something to that. And I think about this. I used to be an operations manager and, project manager as well. But, and you think about operation side of, like, now we need to take, let's say you're in aerospace and you want to take these blueprints or your drawings, and take your materials, and you take your trained staff that are very good at making certain things, and you have your processes, and now you have to then take those and build that into an airplane, or build that into a widget that goes into an airplane, or whatever you're doing. And online, where how do we pull everything together into those packages? And there's a lot involved there, right? It's very content creation, processes, and sales, and hooking things together. So the production side is bringing that together. Problem solving. Do you think we need problem solving ever in a business? And
every single day? Yes. Yes. And again, that's a, like we said, this is a, what must we do to make our model work? And that's looking at maybe the things that could come up and how we might address those if they come up, and being kind of agile with that, not being stuck like this is how we do things, but really keeping an open mind with that.
And I would say, one of the things we like to do on big projects, especially, or each month with the client, or things for our agency, is that you might have a hot wash, or you might say, hey, what worked well this month, and let's look at some metrics, and let's look at some other things. And then, or we might have had a problem that month, like the site went down, or so that's where the problem solving, I say, is it's this dynamic, forward-looking thing. But when you solve a problem and you've learned how to deal with these things in multiple different ways, I think about IT, like, why have I become good at IT, right? It's because I hit every night when you had your pager and you looked at your pager and it had all those problems, and you wake up in the middle of the night and you're getting pinged by the second tier, third tier, fourth tier people, or whatever you are. Like, every time you go through that, you become more valuable because you have problem solving skills, you have experiences, and then you now become a key resource, because that's why, as we get better and better about what we do, Kara, right? We learn and get better about what we do and solve problems. And, sometimes the problems don't even become problems because you've solved them before they become a problem.
Yeah, very proactively thinking about what could happen, and then hopefully resolving that before it does, like you said. Yeah, knowing what can happen.
Yeah. And then the platform is the last thing, right? And we talk about that, like our digital membership, and the platform has a lot of resources in there, and it's bundling all that stuff together. But there are some things that it does, and automated things and other things that and it delivers that value. So it's part of the actions, and over time, your platform and your processes and your people and your content all together become this and that's why they're related together. These key activities and key resources are so important, and they work together.
They do.
Your actions, and together you can now create value in the world.
Yes, they sure do, Andrew. They're so tied together. Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's see. So we were talking about, those the key activities. Let's go. I think the last of the key partnerships is the next one. So
Yes.
we'll go in here. Key partnerships. Want to introduce this one?
I do. Yes. And I look at this a little differently than just those two words. It's not just about like having an active partnership with another company, like a supplier or something like that, but it's also what we do with the people that help us provide the thing that we provide. So it could be a supplier, it could be doing a JV with another company, it could be doing something with a competitor, but it's in both of our mutual interest to really partner on some new product or idea or communications tool, something like that. So that's a lot of fun to look at it in a little different way, not just like true partnerships. Like Andrew and I are best partners ever. So that's very much a partnership, but also looking at, there's some different ways to look at partnerships here.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that, but yeah, for sure. And that's where we talk these different aspects of those, and Kara hit them a lot on a lot of those. So I guess the first thing is who, but I think you have to define what a partner is. And I think Kara's main point on that was you hit it right on there, is that don't be locked into like partnerships like in a business model, or partners with your suppliers or your vendors, or partners with, we know some restaurants that, you might have a key resource that you're having a hard time finding good quality, or it's more customized. Recently, we saw some winemakers working with chefs to create chef's blend, and that's a really cool aspect. And thus, it's from both perspectives, that the chefs or the restaurant might be a customer, and vice versa. From the chef's perspective, you need potentially wine at your restaurant, and you maybe want specific wines or blends of wines to match special meals or things that you're continually going. So that's a partnership or a joint venture, it could be, or just a partnership where it's a mutual benefit, right? Another one was a restaurant we know is a German restaurant, and then they worked with a bread making to make amazing pretzels, right?
Yes.
Worked on, or a beer maker that makes German beer for the restaurant, and they work together on tweaking the
recipes
together, so that they joint venture those together. That's a few ideas there, but I originally, when I saw this, I did, I thought what Kara was saying, I had a very kind of limited aspect of that, and kind of going more into that, and more we have experience in the world, I think we realize that truly this is almost like that. It's almost on the other side of customers, but this is a super, I hate using the word synergy, but synergistic, amazing thing that's hard to put value on. But, I've seen some really cool communities that are working together to promote art and other things like that. It's truly a really cool way that you can look at partners. But what are some of the motivations of partnerships? And that was, there's a few here, but optimizations and scaling, right? Reduction of risk. Right? We talked about, maybe if you buy pretzels from all over the place, then, maybe you want to really work on quality and shape and size that goes through those. And so you might reduce risk by working with a certain vendor to specialize it in the things that you're doing. And then also acquisition of resources or activities, and those could be that maybe you have you need skilled people in certain ways. So maybe you work with a school and you provide some of the
Mhm.
training so that the school comes out and you have
Yeah.
some of the people that are trained in your processes and ideas before they even come out. So
Right.
uh,
Right. Internship programs would be a great example of that. Yeah.
that's a great thing. Both reduction of risk,
Mhm. Mhm.
uh, you know, from that perspective, right? So if you work with
Right.
somebody for 6 months as an intern and then they do an amazing job, it's
Mhm.
much easier to hire somebody that you've seen them do their work than
Right. Yes.
it might not exactly what you're thinking, but that's just came to
Yeah.
my mind.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, let's see, and then you hit on this before, and these are the types of partnerships, and we talked about strategic, um, non-competitive focused, but then there
Mhm.
can be competitor partnerships that are in um, mutual benefit for both of you.
Right. Mhm.
Joint ventures. I know, some of our memberships, we work with people that are specialists in other things, and we focus on the digital marketing side and building the platforms and all that, and they are
Mhm.
focusing on being
Right.
specialists in the things that they're good at.
Mhm.
And of course, like car hit on buyer and supplier is a
Right.
good one as well as another type of partnership. So, um, wow, we're almost to the last block here.
That's fun.
And again, there's a lot here, and again, we didn't have a chance to go through much of the details here. And but I think if you really can put some basic ideas to each of these areas, definitely a lot of ideas here. So, you want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about cost structure here, Cara?
Yeah, you bet. Excuse me. The cost structure, yes, just how to run, like it says, to run your business and successfully deliver the value. What are the costs involved with getting that out there to your customers? So, Andrew, I know you can go through some details on this, but there's a lot of different costs to consider, and some of them we might not even think of when we first start visualizing the way our business is going to run.
Yeah, and also one of the first boxes up in the corner there is drivers of cost, and
Hmm.
Cara hit on an important point of sometimes our costs we're not going to understand until maybe we go in down the road, or you're starting your projects or your
Hmm. Right.
operations, things like that. I know as a project manager, when I was doing project management, a lot of the times, one of the things of risk reductions are if you look for all the ideas of where um, you could find problems that come up where
Hmm.
costs that you didn't account for. And then they also have different buckets like management reserve and all that kind of other things, like where you
Right.
might account for things that you may not know, or you may put a certain percentage in there too, because you never know all the details, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
So true. Yep.
uh, and the last um, one second here. So yeah, and so what are the structures of there? And I think this one's really interesting. Is um, very interesting. Um, one of the things are cost driven or value driven, right, Cara? I mean, your cost can be.
Hmm.
Are
Right.
you driving the cost down to as low as possible, or are you saying you're providing value there, and focusing on you know the best
Yeah.
customer
Would
service, the best,
right. Right. Would that kind of be the Walmart versus Nordstrom
yeah, I
idea?
mean,
You think,
and in
Andrew?
the digital world too, right? Like, you have the
Hmm.
best
Right.
artists and the
Right.
best, movie makers that make beautiful, um, uh, videos for you to watch, or
Yes.
like
Hmm.
for a lot of the people we work with on starting new businesses or memberships or things like that, you may not
Hmm.
need or even need to focus on that. It's not necessarily driving down
Yes.
costs, but
Yes.
you're saying,
Right.
I have value, but do I need to be perfect before I start? And we know that sometimes perfect is the enemy to getting
Mhm.
started sometimes. right?
Right. That's so true. Yeah.
So yeah, cost driven, or are you focusing on the lowest cost, the widgetized, like you said, maybe the Walmart
Uh-huh.
kind of focus, or
Right.
maybe the Nordstrom's where they have, maybe some snacks while you come in, and or they provide you some water while you're waiting, or
Right.
trying on things or whatever, and so, but then you might provide, it might cost more money for those products, right? And so of
Exactly. And you're,
course it's not a
yes.
1 or 0, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last thing to think about, in we won't go into it, but what are the characteristics? Are they fixed costs? Are they variable costs? Um,
Hmm.
when we order shirts for companies and things like that, like if you order 100 shirts or 500 shirts or whatever, it might be cheaper if you order those. That could be a variable thing, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
And also with
Yeah.
economies of scale and economies of scope, right? And
Yeah. Good point.
the economies of
Yeah.
scope also is if you work with different projects and different partners, you might be able to leverage some of the same costs along the same projects as well. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
so
So good
this
to
is
look at
it.
that.
I mean, kind of kind of the whole thing kind of together. Now that we've kind of gone through it one time, and in the podcast here, and we're going here pretty long, but what's your kind of thought over the whole thing and how it kind of relates together now that we've kind of gone through it once? What's your
Yeah.
initial
Yeah.
thought?
For me, it really is. It really is that a canvas. And I see it now as a more of a paint by number thing. And all of those elements, when they're all colored in and they have some texture and some different gradations and that kind of thing, it's going to make the whole of that picture a lot more appealing. And just like with a digital business or any business, when we think about all those pieces early on, ideally, or if we're down the road a little bit more, just really thinking about all those pieces and how they fit together. And again, I like to just come back to the thing of serving a customer's needs, and those are all the ways that are going to help us do that.
And that's why we started with customer, right? And then the value proposition.
Exactly.
Who
Exactly.
are we
Yeah.
trying to provide value to? And then what
Hmm.
value are we trying to provide to them?
Yeah.
And you hit it on the head about, if you look at costs as well. And one last thing,
Hmm.
we hit was the drivers of costs. And one of the things I forgot to mention is that this is the last box that you fill in, and once you're doing your planning,
Yes. Good
because
point.
realistically, you need to understand who you're gonna target, what your um, value proposition to channels. How do you want to have a high-end
Hmm.
customer relationship, or do you want to have an FAQ? I mean, you have to bring all this in before you can really cost things down, and really understand what labor and hours and materials
Right.
and
Hmm.
creating those key resources, and how
Right.
long it takes to do those key activities, right? So
Yes. Yes.
that's the last step.
So
And
true.
I'll add on what you said, Cara. Like, I really, why this resonates with me, and this concept resonates with me, is because I like to see everything up front. And I think we've seen in some of our projects, um,
Hmm.
a long time ago, that sometimes if maybe some of these aren't as clear, um, then ultimately we put a lot of work in, and then you might find out later that you're missing
Hmm.
some key things, that
Right.
or you're maybe not focusing on the right customers, or or you're kind of trying to do something for everybody, and sometimes that doesn't work.
Hmm.
Like,
Right.
you really need to focus on who your avatar or
Yeah.
who that
So
customer
true.
is. And so many lessons here. And then again,
Yeah.
it's just through experience, and this model, I think, is a good planning structure. And then we really get into what we were talking about before,
Hmm.
where now we understand, we have a visualization of these building blocks. We can look
Hmm.
at now patterns of how companies, you can now pick any company that you resonate with, and any company that you see
Hmm.
works well, and you're like, I like how
Yes.
Tesla, or if you're digital, like how, like Car mentioned, funnel hacking or whatever. Like, how do they do this, and how do they sell it, and what do they sell, and how do
Hmm.
they reach their customers, and how do they, what are they
Right.
selling, and how's their upsells, and right, and all that stuff. And you can put all this in a map, and if you like something, then you can put those in there and then try to
Hmm.
see how
Yeah.
they resonate with you. So um, last is really just kind of to wrap this all up is this is uh, this is all about the Canvas business model innovation, right? We understand this, so
Hmm.
now we can start innovating and talking about this, right, Cara?
Yes, exactly. And using the same common language and kind of knowing the path ahead to that orbit.
Yeah. And again, we're Blue Ascension, and we run a digital marketing agency. There's our QR code. You can scan it even from the screen here, even on your computer, or just go to blueascension.com. But ultimately, we're trying to just share ideas and thoughts and explore this journey as together. And definitely, we're excited about this, and we're going to
Hmm.
talk more about the individual pieces we talked about today, or maybe a little bit into the how to's of all of this. So thank you for your time today. And
Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. And
all right.
thanks, Andrew. Good discussion about business model Canvas. I loved it. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
see you all around, and until the next podcast.
We'll see you.